Good evening, everybody in computer land. I hope you're well. Long old day, as I always say that. Well, thanks for the kind comments in the previous videos, and if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe. It's nice. Yes, I think I've got, well, according to the numbers, 50. Yes, 50 wonderful subscribers. Thank you so much. Onward and upward, as they say. On to the next million now. And anyway, this evening's video, I think that I do enjoy watching people, not that I'm such a pervert, but I, I, I'm constantly amazed by human beings. They are truly fascinating things. And they come in all shapes and sizes, colours, religions, nationalities, and things like this. But there are common denominators within the species of human beings, some of which I find infuriating. And I'm not, I repeat, not guilty of what I'm going to be talking about tonight, this evening. There are very few things that irritate the hell out of me to the point of distraction, but one aspect is that I suppose, in all seriousness, I have been guilty of it, but it is a childish thing, and I grew out of it. I either grew out of it or I had it slapped out of me, or I did it once and learned a lesson, and it was a lesson learned for life. But amazingly, there are adults out there, and you might be living with one, or children who haven't quite yet learnt the error of their ways, that continue to do this. Humans have lots of habits. Some of them are good, some of them are unhealthy. Some of them are quite perverse, quite frankly. We're complicated, as I've said before. But this particular habit irritates the crap out of me when I'm exposed to people who suffer from such an affliction. And what I'm talking about is pettiness. And this can be anything, really. In many forms, pettiness. The people who are petty, it's nothing to do with education. I've met some seriously educated people who, when you sit down and watch them and talk to them, and they are incredibly petty. I would put petty brackets childlike, childish, churlish, and it bugs me. It shouldn't bug me, but it does, because I want to slap them. I want to do the job their parents should have done the moment they spotted this trait in their offspring. And give an example. I used to go around and knock around with my mates as a youngster, and his mother was very petty. Very, very petty indeed. She was one of these perfectionists. Well, she tried to be. She was continuously cleaning the house. She had this affliction. You know, the house, you had to walk on air. You had to touch it. Well, don't touch anything. Just leave it alone. And if I were to move something a millimetre out of place, I'd turn my back. She'd be on my case. She'd be moving it back to where it was. And you think, well, it was absolutely fine where I left it. I put it back to where I found it. And yet they make such a fuss about it, don't they? I'm surprised she didn't get a tape measure out. And believe me, I'm sure she was well capable of doing that. And I've hated pettiness all my life. And, you know, my wife is well aware of my observations. Because just on occasions, you know, when we first started courting, such an old-fashioned word, you know, she was showing signs of on occasions being a little bit petty, whether it is semantics or whether the way you use the word, or petty physically and petty verbally. And I find this a trait is a dreadful trait in a human being. Because, excuse me, I got a hair on my lip now. I just find you want to say to them, did that make the huge bit of difference, putting it in the right place? You know, they'll get up from where they're sitting and they'll walk across a lounge and they'll move an ornament half an inch, quarter of an inch, and they sit down again, they look again, that's it. And this is basically type of obsessive compulsive disorder, isn't it? OCD they call it. And verbal pettiness as well. They will argue to the extreme. Now it's normally, this rears its ugly head, doesn't it, in childhood, with your children maybe, or your relatives' children, if you've been exposed to children, if you don't have any. But children usually start this pettiness in little petty squabbles. Why are you making such a fuss? Why are you arguing? Because she did that, yada yada. And that is the time to knock it on the head, metaphorically. Not suggesting child abuse, although it's very tempting to bang their heads together sometimes. And I did have my head banged together with my brother's head once arguing over trivia. The pair of us were just as bad, and we both laugh about it now. But at the time it hurt like hell, but it was a lesson learned. Donk! Now argue. And it was over something so petty. And, there is verbal pettiness, isn't there? And there is physical pettiness, of course. And we are so critical. And, being critical of somebody you purport to love, or they love you, and being critical about one another is equally petty. We all have our little peccadillos, or our little foibles, if you like. But out of them all, I think pettiness is unforgivable. It's unacceptable in my life. I stamp on it very quickly, and I cannot stand petty people. They moan. Petty people are generally moaners. Oh, God, look at the dust in here. Look at the dust. It's too bright, the light. They're always complaining, petty people. Have you noticed? They complain about anything. It's too cold, it's too hot. The decor's not very nice in here, and they start looking around. And, when we have new visitors around the house sometimes that I don't know, it's like they're checking your house out. These petty people, why don't they just shut up and come in and sit down and shut up and have a cup of tea and a chat? All this looking around, you can see their busy little eyes. You wonder if they're casing the joint sometimes. And I learned very quickly who the petty ones are, because their eyes are everywhere. They're looking to critique and criticize, and show me a statue erected on behalf of services to humanity of a critic. You don't see any around the world, do you? Well, here he stands, 5'9" of him. All he did was criticise, condemn and complain, but he's a critic. Yes, he did such wonderful service to humanity. No, he didn't. All he did was piss people off by being a critic, and a petty one at that. Don't get me started on critics. But equally, petty people are pathetic. They need to get a life. So what? So what if something isn't quite right? Perhaps it likes being where it's at. Does it really matter? This is the thing, we have to put things into perspective. There are animals and children dying all over our world through such horrible things, and because of such horrible things. And yet here he is, or here she is, bitching about something so petty, so inconsequential to the enjoyment of life. Oh my God, it's ruined their bloody day, hasn't it? The that maybe the plant pot wasn't in the right position, George. I don't have it like that, as though he's broken a golden rule of their marriage. It was in their vows that he should not mess with her flower pots. What a euphemism. I cannot imagine. How can you take people seriously that are so petty and annoying? It would bug the hell out of me. I'm sorry, I'd have to slap them stupid. I really would. Now, the opposite of being petty, of course, is being slovenly, just let it live where it's living. Live and let live. Leave it alone. Stop worrying it, moving it. Leave it alone. Yeah, but I want it there, and it doesn't look right there. And you think, oh, Jesus, here she goes again, being petty. This is such trivial crap. There are so many tragedies in life to spend time thinking about and maybe working towards solving and yada, yada, yada. But to sit there fretting about silly little things. I do remember once cutting my parents' lawn. God, it was a nightmare. It was at the time you had to push these bloody things. Lawnmowers. Do you remember the pushable lawnmowers? Every Sunday, God, clatter, 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 and lots of cardiac arrests going on in the summer in those days, of course. And you could sweat your ass off for an hour or two doing the lawn. And Dad, what do you think, Mum? What do you think, Dad? And you can bloody guarantee it, Well, you missed a bit. And you think, you say anything after what I've gone through today to do this lawn. And yeah, but you missed a couple of. You just want to smack them. But that's being petty. That is, isn't it? Making a mountain out of a molehill, such pettiness. And it's such a horrible trait. It's up there with hypocrisy and double standards, in my opinion, but it does stand above the rest. And I'm not sure if you've ever experienced petty people, but they drive me insane. With all the tragedy and hell that's going on around us, we sweat the small stuff. Well, don't sweat the small stuff. Life's too short to worry about petty, small, silly little things. And it doesn't have to be things, it can be words as well. We get hurt so easily by a misplaced word that we've taken the wrong way, maybe. We worry about it with little worry warts. We sit there wondering, did she really mean that? Did she really mean... I hate it, Why would she say that, George? Why would she say that about me? And they'll fret over some inconsequential phrase or observation that a friend's made to them. You can imagine Betty inviting her friend round to show her the new curtains, and Betty's there, okay, yeah, that's very nice. And her friend's looking around, yeah, very nice, yeah. Yeah, it's a nice colour, but I said, well, eventually you'll get used to them. What do you mean you'll get used to them? Well, if they were my curds, I wouldn't have chose that shade. I wouldn't have had that colour. For me, I'm sure you love it, and I'm sure you love it. But if it were me, I would have gone for a deeper shade of red. Ah, really? Absolutely. But hey ho, horses for courses, Dorothy. And anyway, she'll piss off home, her friend, and Dorothy will sit there and think, what a bitch. And now Dorothy's unhappy because her friend has criticised, and in a nice sort of way, you understand. Subtle, isn't it? Very subtle, these little stabs. It's stabbed a dagger into her chest, like metaphorically, that her friend doesn't approve. We seek other people's approbation, don't we? We want their endorsement. Oh yes, it's lovely, Betty. And I don't know why I picked Betty, but there was arbitrary. But, what a bitch that woman is to Betty to do that to a friend. A person she calls a friend and thinks of as a friend. Well, with enemies like that, who needs friends, eh? Well, this is what happens on a daily basis. People are so cavalier with their word choices. And I learnt this in my younger days when I got a smack in the mouth for using inappropriate phrases and words when I really should have thought 4 times and said nothing, rather than speak 4 times and receive a thump. But we are very cavalier with people's feelings. And we can hurt other people's feelings so easily as well by one silly little misplaced statement or a word or something we've done that's insensitive, because we're sensitive souls. You know, it might be just a little prick, but it really hurts. Oh, for sure it does. We sweat the small stuff over such things. When there's tragedy and no hope out there, yet we do sweat the small stuff over such trivia. What do you mean you haven't hoovered up the house while I've been out? I don't ask you to do very much, and what I do ask is very little, quite frankly, and you can't be bothered to do that. Well, I think it's important. Don't you love me, George? You know, this is how it goes. The emotional blackmail, the control freakery in relationships is another thing that drives me nuts. I don't control my wife. Heaven forbid. And equally, it's reciprocated. She doesn't control me. I'm an out-of-control rebel with a cause on occasions. And she leaves me to my own devices and knows that give enough rope and I'll hang myself. And she waits for the terminal click of my neck as I trip over my tongue on many occasions. But hey-ho, she's learned me and my foibles. But the one thing I am not is I am not a criticiser. I don't generally condemn, and I don't complain. Not all at once. I don't criticise, condemn and complain all in one go. I give people a break, you know. But I certainly don't do it to my wife or my family. If I've got nothing good to say about somebody, you know, chances are I won't say it unless I want to offend. And then I don't hesitate. I don't hold back. They can have it with both barrels if they truly want. Yes, I've been responsible for upsetting people around a dinner table at our house that we've invited. People actually that have been invited, and you know, and I just, okay, if you want to invite them. Who's she bringing? His boyfriend? Oh no. Okay, I haven't met him before. Oh, you might like him. I don't know. Oh, that's a sign for trouble. I knew it. You used the word might. You've met him, have you? Yeah, I have. And we'll see how you get on. And, you know, they come round and within a minute, you know, you don't like them. You know, I am super fast at, you know, assessing whether I like somebody. It's something to do about their aura and their being. I don't know if you've ever had this experience of standing next to somebody who you can't understand why you don't like, yet you don't know them. You just know you don't like them. It's almost like having a 6th, 7th and 8th sense, really. But ultimately, I'm rarely wrong in that respect. I've been wrong once this year, and that was when I thought I was wrong, believe it or not. I'm amazed at my own abilities sometimes, but, you know, out of them all, I cannot stand self-indulgent people. They talk nothing about anything but themselves. Within 5 seconds of them saying, you know, well, you've listened to me talk about me for 15 hours. Now, you tell me, what do you think about me? You think, oh, God, he's at it again. And, you know, it's funny. I have great fascination in people watching. I go downtown. I try to avoid getting a smack in the mouth by checking out the babes. And I'm generally not checking out other men's wives or children. I'm not sort of peedy. But I like people watching. And Desmond Morris wrote a great book about people watching, didn't he? One of the first true professional people watchers, Desmond Morris. You might know the book. It was called People Watching. Well, there's now to strangers folk, as they say in Yorkshire, and I'm not too sure about thee. Well, that's very true. We are all individuals. I mean, wouldn't life be boring if we were all cloned, all the same? All with our stupid little peccadillos and habits and foibles. But at least we'd all be super picky, wouldn't we? We'd all go into each other's houses and move ornaments around that we thought was slightly off centre, straighten that picture. That's another thing that drives these people nuts, is if they come into your house and your picture hasn't been lined up with a spirit level. It's a millimetre out, and they keep looking. So what are you looking at? I don't know, George, if it's me, it's just me. It could be my glasses, that picture, which is bloody wonderful, is it deliberate to mount it slightly left hand down? And then all attention is now on your deficiency of being able to put something horizontal. Well, it's a nice picture though, isn't it? Oh, I'm not saying it isn't. It's just that it's not hanging right. And you think, why don't you get up and piss off in your Gucci shoes as fast as you can? Because that's what I want to really say to them. Right, if I would not go into somebody's house and start picking fault. Oh, nice carpet, not the colour I would have chosen. You possibly met people like this. I got relatives like this. They don't come round very often. Once is enough, thanks very much. They probably come round to check the joint out, check me out. And I often get slight remarks or sly remarks, second, third and fourth hand. And, they know full well if they say it to my face, they'll get it with both barrels. Because I'm intolerant of such behaviour. They know me. They avoid me now, which is rather good, because that was the plan. And I don't really like people coming around my house. To be brutally honest, some very close friends, that's about it, thanks. And I won't invade them, and I won't invade their privacy. I certainly wouldn't go into somebody's house and start saying, not the colour I'd choose. But some people are real bastards. And, with people like that as friends, I mean, come on. This is why I have 5 or less friends in my life on a regular basis. I'm zero tolerant of such things. And I'm not saying I've never been petty in my life, but I was petty when I was a child until I had it thumped out at me. Because it's such a childish thing to do, and we should grow out of being childish. I did learn very quickly in life to think once, think twice. If it's not positive, say nothing at all. Less said, sooner mended is an easy way to say it and remember it. And out of all the people that I know, and I can think of maybe 10 in my life that have really stood out from the crowd as terrific people, the common denominator in all of them is that I never heard them criticise, condemn or complain. They didn't. I can't think of one of them that would, make a personal criticism about anyone. They might criticise the government or the country or do a self-critic. They'll criticise themselves. Oh, my hair's a bit fly away, or, put my makeup on a bit thick. Some women say this, and I could have done a better job, but, forgive me. They're self-critic, but they would never criticise other people. And that is a hallmark of a good education, good manners. It is good manners, because a careless word can really, really sting people for the rest of their life. And I'm sure you can think of occasions when you've been terribly hurt, and the person hurting you has been oblivious to the fact that something so trivial, that they think so trivial, has hurt you so much. Well, let them only do it the once. And if they do it again, it's a habit and a deliberate thing for them to do. Okay, and then you want to pick them up on it. That's the second time you've mentioned yada yada yada. Is there some point you're trying to make, or are you just being critical? You've got to catch these people and slap them down very, very quickly, otherwise, or disassociate yourself from them entirely and get them out of your social calendar. Because there are people that exist, and their reason for living sometimes, because they're jealous, will come and criticize you because they just, well, quite frankly, They want what you've got and they're frustrated because they haven't got it, so they're bitter and twisted. And yet they purport to be your friend. What is the difference between a friend and an acquaintance? I used to ponder this a lot. Well, I have many acquaintances. I can say, yes, I know them, I know of them, I've met them for a few times. Not exactly that pally, we're not social friends, we're not personal friends. You see, there are friends and then there are acquaintances. These are people who walk past in a corridor at work maybe, and hi, good morning, hi, how are you? All right, thanks. That's it, that's an acquaintance. I've made their acquaintance. But friends are a different game. Yet friends can be quite spiteful to one another without realising it, and some of them actually do realise it, and you have to separate those that just have a reason to goad other people and get some schadenfreudic pleasure out of doing so. You see, the only way they can feel superior to you is if they bring you down. Okay? It's a bit like they're going to stand on your shoulders in order to be taller than you. And on a flat plane, they're never taller than you, but they bring you down mentally, if not physically. They can cripple you on the inside. This is why big dogs often are intimidated by little snappy dogs. I mean, if the big dog, the Alsatian just looks at the Chihuahua and says, "Carry on barking, son." But, and the little thing's giving it large. And everybody knows that is a really patient Alsatian. A very forgiving one, because one snap of that Alsatian's chops around the Chihuahua's neck, it soon shut its trap. And there are people like this. It's very often short people, and I vertically challenged, shall we say. I'm just trying to follow the sun here. Vertically challenged people are often aggressive. They've got to make up for it, haven't they? It's a little bit like the run to the litter trying to be tough and hard, just like its bigger siblings. It's not going to happen. And it carries forward into humans as well. But some of the biggest people I've ever had dealings with in my life, physically big, have been mentally very small. So rather strange, isn't it? You can get gentle giants, and yet you can get mini monsters. And this is why life is so fascinating. It can be if you're an observer. But in summary, if you have a critic, or you're living with a critic, or someone who's so petty, you've really got to put a stop to it. It'll drive you nuts. But if they've got petty well into your relationship, marriage, friendship, and they've got away with it so far, you have to slap them down a little bit more subtly next time. Because I've caught people moving things around in my house. Just a little. And while I'm talking to them, I'll make a point of holding on to it and going, and moving it back. That's all it takes. That's where I like it to be. End of matter. That's it. Now, it's not important, quite frankly, that it's there or there. It's important that they've had the temerity to move it where it was. That's the point. It's a bit like a dog pissing on a street, on a house corner to claim its territory. People do this. They go into other people's houses and start just moving your painting. I hope you don't mind. It was driving me nuts. No, I actually like it tilted. You've really upset me now. That was 16 degrees down. Do you know what you've left it at? It should be horizontal. I never mind horizontal. I like it 16 degrees down, and now you've ruined my bloody day, quite frankly. What are you doing messing around with my painting? I tilt a painting 16 degrees, and now you've wrecked it. I'm going to have to get the protractor out now. Make them feel bad for interfering, and in future, don't touch anything in this house. Just sit down and be quiet. Hopefully you won't come round again. But avoid petty people and petty arguments, because it'll drive you mad, folks. And we've got enough things driving us mad, like sodium fluoride, inoculations, chemtrails, the government, you name it. And Brexit, pig sick of Brexit. Frankly, I don't give a shit whether we stay in or not. It doesn't pay my gas bill, quite frankly. It matters not at my age. And if I was younger, I probably wouldn't give a shit, because none of the youngsters do give a shit, because they're too busy planning on who they're going to lay next week, or which party they're going to do. And the Game of Thrones is coming on, isn't it, on pay TV? The final episodes. That's the more important stuff. Never mind the trivia. Leave that to the trivial people who want to go around and mess with you. But being petty, it is so childish. It shows that we really are surrounded not by adults. They may look like adults, these people, but inside they're silly little children playing silly little games that they've never grown out of, because they're petty. Their parents should have slapped them stupid until they got out of it. But there again, their parents could have been petty. I'm sure it's an inherent trait. Fortunately, it's one my children don't suffer from. Love you all, take care, catch you tomorrow. Avoid petty people like the plague. Sling them out of your house unceremoniously, with a view for them not coming back. That'll give you something to look forward to. A bit of peace and quiet in the disorganised home that you live in. Well, it's your bloody home. You live how you like. Never mind petty. There's bigger fish to fry.